All right. Thank you all so much for being here today. I think the official title of this meeting is Coffee with the Counselors. I think, Carly, that is the official term. Thanks to her, and
Yeah.
thanks to the Nevada School Counselor Association for partnering with us on this webinar. We're really grateful for the opportunity to participate in this space and to hopefully provide school counselors in Nevada and elsewhere with some valuable information and tools today. So thank you very, very much. Let's talk about a couple of things today, including the role of the school counselor, our new data courses for school counselors, as well as some different professional learning pathways. And on this webinar today, we have the team from Study Smart Tutors, myself and Julia, and I'll have her introduce herself in a minute. And we also have Mindy Willard from Hatching Results, and she'll introduce herself as well. Together, we have worked with a number of schools and college access programs and different folks in Nevada, around the country. Mindy is in Wisconsin, Julia and I are in California, but we have done lots of work in Nevada and elsewhere. But super excited to be here today, and want to give each of them a moment to introduce themselves.
Sure, I can go ahead and go. I am with Hatching Results as of last summer. Prior to that, I was the school counseling coordinator for the Madison Metropolitan School District. And so we're a mid-sized district in Madison, Wisconsin, and we had about 30,000 students in our district, and I supported 50 school counselors during that time. Prior to that, I was a high school counselor, and before that, I was a K-8 school counselor in the Phoenix area. Don't get me started on how I ended up in Wisconsin after living in Phoenix, but here I am. I'm working on embracing that 7 years later. Also, more importantly, thank you for hosting this Nevada School Counseling Association. I'm a former past president of the Arizona School Counselor Association, so I know how much love, blood, sweat, and tears go into volunteering and being a part of your state school counseling association. So shout out to all of you here that are involved and volunteer your time and energy to be a part of your state school counseling association. So I'm excited to be here, and I'm going to pass this on to Julia.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to brag about it. Beautiful, sunny California, but I'm going to put it out there. I used to live in Utah. Before that, I used to live in Phoenix. So here we go. Finally finding the perfect weather for my family. I am with the Study Smart Tutors. I work as a senior director of education. Before that, I was a school counselor in a Title I school in Santa Ana, Orange County. I did that for about 8 years. Before that, I was in the classroom and taught chemistry for high school students. Super excited to be here. Appreciate your work, your advocacy, and all the blood and tears. We can all relate to that. So I'm excited for today.
Awesome. Just a quick battery check-in for everybody on this call. I know it's Tuesday morning, maybe coming back from spring break last week. Just want to get a sense of how is your battery on this Tuesday. You can give us a color in the chat box. You can give us an answer. You can give us a rating. However you want to answer that question. Hopefully we're not going to get too many empties on this Tuesday morning, but if so, that's okay too. If you, all right, first a back from spring break, says Brittany, she's green. Francisco's feeling okay. Nice. Excellent.
Oh, feeling all right today. Good. What's the mix between yellow and green? Lime? I don't know. All right.
Excellent. Well, thank you all very much for participating. Excited to turn it over to Mindy.
All right. Well, today we're going to spend some time talking a bit about data. And as the title calls, trying to get you a little more comfortable with data. I have a question. How many of you became school counselors because you love data? Crickets. I always get crickets when I ask that question. I've yet to find someone that says, you know, in high school and college, I loved numbers, I loved math, so I wanted to become a school counselor. The truth is, many of us became school counselors because we like social emotional things, mental health, and supporting our students. And data is something that is very intimidating to many of us. And I'm with you, Megan. I didn't become a school counselor because I love data, but now I mean, I quit my job to work for a company that specializes in data and school counseling. So I really appreciate data now because I can see the impact that counselors getting comfortable and using data can have on students. And I'm all about impacting students and communities. So we're going to talk to you today a bit about how data is not a four-letter word and try to get you a little more comfortable exploring data. And we're going to talk to you about some opportunities for digging more deeply into data, specifically through some of our online courses that Hatching Results has developed with Study Smart tutors. So I think, Julia, if you want to hit the next one, there we go. All right, go ahead. You can go to the next one. So we're going to talk a little bit about the role of the school counselor first. If you've been around in the profession for a while, that you know that the last 7 or 8 years have been really exciting for us. Was anybody around when Michelle Obama started talking about school counseling and Better Make Room came around and Reach Higher? And oh my gosh, I got to be 10 feet away from Michelle Obama a couple of times. I forgot to mention in my intro that I was a former ASCA School Counselor of the Year. And so while I didn't get to meet her, other people did. That came 2 years after I won. I got to be in the same breathing space as her, and I'll call that a win. But there's been a lot of great, exciting things happening in school counseling. We have a stronger profession. People are talking about social emotional learning. Oh my gosh, I've been doing this for 20 years. And until probably 2 years ago, the greater community in education and broader was not talking about social emotional learning. It's no longer just the work of school counselors. Everyone is embracing that. And students win when we do that. We're seeing more money geared toward mental health and supporting students and supporting the work that school counselors do. We're partnering now with more outside mental health organizations and agencies to come in and support. We're working collaboratively with teachers more. We have more access to data. Oh my gosh, back in the day, anybody been around a while? I used to collect all of my data through pen and paper, and I would have to sit and tally every kid's pre and post. And this was when I was still learning data, so I didn't really know what I was doing, but I made it like 10 times harder than it had to be. And I had a box under my desk with all my pre and post tests. So yeah, thankfully technology has expanded and getting access to data and using data is not quite as daunting as it used to be. And we're going to talk a bit today about MTSS, and that is much more prevalent in our schools now as well. And we're going to talk about Mtmdss in a few minutes, which is the school counseling spin on multi-tiered system of supports. So let me ask you, we've had a lot of great things happening in our profession, but we're still not where we want to be. What are some of the continued pressures and challenges that are getting in the way of the school counseling profession continuing to grow and become what we know it's capable of being for students? We're going to do this through a Mentimeter. And so Julia is going to drop a link in the chat. So go ahead and click on that link and throw them out there, just brainstorming. What are the challenges that are getting in the way of our programs and our roles being able to do all that they can do for students? And we'll show them in a second once they all start coming in. Julia will show what's coming in. There we go. Yeah, we're in quite a mental health crisis, absolutely. So a lot more mental health crisis than we've had in the past. A lot of like school counselors, I've heard Olivia Carter say, we're not the junk drawer of the school, but sometimes it feels like that way. We're kind of a jack of all trades, and because Dr. Julie Hartline talks about nice counselor syndrome. We have a lot of nice counselor syndrome. So we say yes to a lot of things. And sometimes while we're not saying yes, we're still being told that we have to do a lot of these non-counseling duties. Misunderstandings about our role. Different people describe our role very differently. A lot of expectations. Okay. Looking at funding. Yep. Budget cuts coming around, and people start to look at like, I don't even know what the school counselor does. So maybe we don't need them around. We can have this other person do these things that the school counselor is doing. Large caseloads, absolutely. When I was in Phoenix, I was at the K-8 school. I started, I'm going to date myself a little bit, in 2004 and had 550 students. And we went up, by the time I left, 7 years later, 11 years later, I had 700 students. And it was just me. There was no social worker. There was a psych that came around and only did special education testing. So I hear you with large caseloads, absolutely. I don't want to mean fabulous, but fabulous that you're sharing. And these are things that we hear coast to coast when we ask these questions. Oftentimes when we work in a district, we think our district is the only one operating this way. The good news is, and the bad news is, that you are not. This is a conundrum that we're dealing with coast to coast in our country with school counseling and education in general. So Julia, go ahead and go back to the main deck. We're going to answer that question later. Thanks. When we ask people, one of the things you mentioned is role confusion. So just imagine how many different answers would we get if I ask people, what do school counselors do? If I ask a counselor in Nevada, I'm going to get one answer. And honestly, if I ask a counselor, two counselors in the same school district would probably even describe their role differently. There are so many different answers to this question, and counselors answer it differently. Administrators answer it differently. The community answers it differently. There is not, when you say, what does a teacher do? People tend to, they don't get the whole gamut of everything, but people have a general idea of what teachers do. But when it comes to what school counselors do, it's all across the board. And you've seen the debate even among school counselors in defining our role. And that's part of the biggest issue is, as a profession and as professionals, we can't even agree on what we do and what our role is within a school. But ASCA has provided a lot of great resources for us, and Hatching Results, with everything that we do, we align to ASCA. You might know Dr. Trish Hatch, our founder, was actually one of the co-authors of the first edition of the ASCA National Model. So we are big fans of ASCA and the work that they do and all of the resources that they provide for school counselors about our role. Go ahead. So we talked a bit about some of this confusion. Like I said, the lack of common understanding, different roles, different districts. Sometimes it really makes my skin crawl when they call people school counselors, but they don't have master's degrees in school counseling, or they're doing the role and they're calling them advisors. They're bringing in other folks to take bits and pieces of the school counseling role. So advocacy is really important for us to help people understand all of our training that is involved, and understanding the impact and the role that we could be having in schools, right? Thanks, Carly. We have an inconsistent public message. Oh my gosh, we are the butt of so many jokes when you turn on TV shows, right? What are those shows that have some terrible images of school counselors? What is the one that was out a couple of years ago, and that counselor was awful. He gave some terrible advice to a student. It was based on a book, but
13 something.
Yeah, 13 Reasons Why. Was that it? Yeah. So there's just a lot of different things that are out there, and don't even get started on legislation and requirements around state licensing and all of those things. There's just a lot that's contributing to the confusion about our role in our work with students. But the one thing that does remain consistent is the data is a part of school counseling. The ASCA National Model has changed quite a bit. When I was in grad school in the early 2000s, it was just like being created. Dr. Trish and Julie, or not Julie Hartline, I'm trying to think of the woman from Arizona, Dr. Judy Bowers and Dr. Trish Hatch were the two of the folks that were instrumental in the first edition. So I was learning about it as they were creating it. And since then, they've revised it, and we're now on the 4th edition. So the thing that is consistent with our national framework for school counseling is data. And that is really important to keep in mind, because data is what's going to help us get out of this rut, help us better define our work, and help us better define the impact that we're having on students. And it's all about that impact. That's why we became school counselors, because we want to impact students. And data is a way that's going to help us do that more efficiently, more effectively, and it's going to demonstrate that impact to others who are holding the pocketbooks and the wallets when it comes time to look at their budgets. Go ahead. We know that, did I skip one? Go back. Was there another one? There we go. We know that there's a lot of research out there around the impact of school counselors. This all comes from ASCA right on their website. They have fabulous articles that are there. If you ever need to access them, please check out their website. But we know that students are more likely to enroll and attend college and persist into year 2, if that's their post-secondary plan, and when they have access to a strong school counselor. We know that our students of color are most impacted positively when they have access to a comprehensive school counseling program and a strong school counselor. We know that they're more likely to graduate, have less behavior problems. Students are more likely to apply for financial aid, and they're more likely to take rigorous courses. In particular, I love that last bullet, because this was a big focus of ours in Madison, was looking at our data to determine who's taking our AP classes. In our district, 25 to 30% of the students in our district were students of color. And then when we looked at the data for the students that were enrolled in our AP classes, they were all white and Asian students. So while we had some students of color in there, we did not have Black students, Hispanic students, biracial students. So just by the counselor starting to look at some data, we were noticing those disproportionalities, and we could use that data to advocate for some systems change. And so ASCA has some great research around that. And I would highly encourage you, if you're a high school counselor and you haven't looked at enrollment data in some of your most rigorous courses, please start doing that, because you're going to find a great opportunity to advocate. Go ahead. So we know you didn't become a school counselor because you love data. So that's why we exist at Hatching Results, is to try to take something that feels a little complex and simplify it for you to help you understand it better and to wrap your head around it. Are you familiar with Mtmdss? If you've ever heard Dr. Trish Hatch speak, she talks about Mtmdss. As I see a little bit of yes, some no's. Let me ask you this. Are you familiar with MTSS, multi-tiered system of supports? That's happening in a lot of our schools across the country, and that's been around for several years now. So we know that that is supporting students. 80% of our students, or all students, are getting a tier 1 programming, right? And 80% of our students are going to get it. 70 to 80%. Tier 1 is good. They're good. But we know that sometimes students need more. So they might need some tier 2 supports. And then we have even more students that might need additional supports, and that would be tier 3 supports. So you're probably already doing this in your building when it comes to academics. Your teachers and your principals understand MTSS. And if you usually districts, I'll notice, will start with academics and then they start looking at behavior with MTSS. Well, what Dr. Trish Hatch said was that completely applies to comprehensive school counseling programs. When we add the domains into that, now we have Mtmdss, multi-tier, multi-domain systems of support. We're going to watch about a 3-minute video so you can hear directly from Dr. Trish Hatch more about multi-tier, multi-domain systems of support. And this is linked in the slide, and we can drop it in the chat, because I think this is a fabulous tool to share with principals and teachers when you're explaining your school counseling program. Go ahead. You're good.
Hi, this is Trish Hatch, and today we're going to talk about the multi-tiered, multi-domain system of supports, or Mtmdss. As educators, we're familiar with the multi-tiered system of support, or MTSS, which focuses on students' academic and behavioral needs. But for school counselors who focus on 3 domains, academic, college and career, and social emotional development, we need a more robust system. We need a multi-tiered, multi-domain system of supports, or Mtmdss. In Mtmdss, school counselors ensure that all students receive the instruction and support they need to grow academically, develop socially and behaviorally, and to prepare for post-secondary options. In this system, activities, instruction, and intervention services are grouped into tiers, ranging from Tier 1 services, a core program of universal supports that apply to everyone, to Tier 2 services, or targeted interventions, which would typically only apply to approximately 20% of students. And finally, to Tier 3 services, intentional interventions, which would typically apply to between 5 and 10% of students. Mtmdss provides a data-driven approach to determining which of these levels of interventions or tiers are appropriate for any individual student. Under Mtmdss, Tier 1 encompasses agreed-upon services that all students receive, such as standards and competency-based school counselor core curriculum lessons, individual student planning, which includes 4- and 6-year academic and post-secondary plans, and district and school-wide agreed-upon activities and events. Tier 1 is designed to be comprehensive, preventative, developmental, and proactive. Tier 2 is designed for students who are exhibiting barriers to learning, struggling academically, or are deserving of additional supports. It uses data-based decision-making to select at-risk indicators such as attendance, behavior, credit deficiency, and post-secondary readiness data. Targeted intervention data elements, grade levels, and timeframes are queried to determine which students qualify for interventions. Depending on the student, Tier 2 interventions may include short-term individual or small group counseling, progress monitoring, consultation, collaboration, and/or referrals to resources within or outside the school building. Tier 3 services are designed for students experiencing emergency or crisis response events, or to support students with needs that remain unresolved within Tier 2. School counselors provide short-term, solution-focused counseling, consultation, and when appropriate, referral to additional resources. Over time, Mtmdss allows school counselors to spend more time implementing proactive Tier 1 action plans and less time engaged in reactive Tier 2 and Tier 3 activities. The ultimate goal is to ensure all students achieve their greatest potential and graduate ready for post-secondary success.
All right, thanks. I did drop the link to that if you ever want to borrow that video and share it. When I would describe comprehensive school counseling or tried to describe the Ask a National model to administrators, their eyes kind of glaze over and it's just a lot. But when I use this model and this framework and I explain it to them, a light bulb goes off because they know MTSS. So when I put it in language that they understand, that really helps them understand more about what a comprehensive school counseling program is through the lens of Mtmdss. So we have a lot of resources on the Hatching Results website. There's a link there. This one's not free on the website, but it's for you all coming today. But I would recommend that you go back to our website and access some of those free resources that accompany some of our textbooks. Whether you have the textbooks or not, you would find some of those resources to be really helpful. But one activity that we often do with districts when we come out and train is we have them start thinking about what's currently happening in your building and who's delivering it. So this is an activity that you can take back. It's linked here for you as a worksheet, but we often do it on big poster paper and we'll put, depending on who's in the space or the dynamics of the district, what is the school psych maybe is doing parts of this, the school social worker, like the different roles that might be at play. Because we know that comprehensive school counseling programs aren't only delivered by school counselors. We work in collaboration with a lot of other people to deliver a comprehensive school counseling program. So I think this is a great activity for you to even do with your principal. Pull it up and sit down and start mapping out what are you already doing, and maybe even use a different color then of where you would like to go with your program. So great resource there for you in regards to Mtmdss. Yep, it just gives you a forced copy, but it's there for you. Go ahead, Julia. So did we get to the question about PD yet? No, that one's coming up. Okay. What Mtmdss provides for you is a framework for your school counseling program. It provides a roadmap. So you're doing less random acts of guidance and more intentional, proactive, and preventative school counseling. What I often see when counselors are seeking out professional development are things they're looking for sessions of this day and age on anxiety, depression, mental health, substance abuse, suicidal ideation, a lot in the social emotional realm. They might be looking for professional development in supporting college and career development, CTE, increasing A to G if you're in California, looking at scholarships, financial aid. We are also looking for PD and experiences to support students with their academic growth, motivation, study skills, managing 504s, those kinds of things. What I don't hear from counselors very often, or when I do go and present at conferences on data, there's not as many folks that are in the room because we're looking for these things that I call the curtains in a house. And we know that in a house, if you don't have a foundation or a framework, or it's sinking and you're trying to hang curtains, you're not going to get anywhere. So all of that PD is very important because we have a lot of students that are struggling right now, or we're new counselors, or we need training in financial aid because we didn't get any of that in grad school, right? So we need to access those. But if you don't have a program or a framework that allows you to actually access students and see them and spend your time with kids, going to all of those trainings on anxiety and substance abuse and financial aid aren't going to get you anywhere. It's going to work for you with the 10 or 15 students that keep showing up at your door asking to see you. But what our framework provides, what the ASCA National Model and Mtmdss provide, is helping you to create systemic change to allow you to have more access to students, to help you measure the impact that your programming has on them. So as I say, you've got to build or rebuild the foundation of your house before you start hanging curtains. And many of us jump to hanging curtains first, if that makes sense. So when we talk about data and school counselors, I don't know if you've seen this before, if your eyes are going to start to cross or glaze over a little bit, but we're going to take the four-letter word here and break it down for you. Some of this, if you've been through ASCA model trainings, you're familiar with some of this language. We talk about three types of data that school counselors keep their eyes on: process, perception, and outcome data. ASCA, with the 4th edition of the ASCA National Model, now calls that participation data, mindsets and behaviors data, and they still call it outcome data. However, ASCA only focuses on achievement data. At Hatching Results, we talk to folks about achievement related data as well. So just notice, if you notice some nuances in the language, if you're very familiar with some of the language ASCA uses, it's all in alignment. It's all still very similar and going in the same direction. So process data, oftentimes this is where I see counselors stop. I'm going to count how many lessons I did. I'm going to count how many students I saw. I'm going to count how many phone calls I did. That's important data, right? To count those things and to share that information. But the question is, so what? So what? You went into 15 classrooms. And I know that sounds a little snotty and a little offensive. And I used to go, oh, clutch my pearls when someone would say, what do you mean, so what? So what? I was so busy. Look at how many lessons I did. I saw 90 kids today. So what? What'd you do with them? What'd they learn? How are they different as a result of all that time you spent with them? Well, they had fun. They were laughing. They were smiling. All right, that's not going to save our jobs when it comes time to look at budgets. That's not what's important to our community. Yes, they had fun while you were in there, but we want to make sure that their knowledge, attitudes, and skills have been impacted, and ultimately their outcomes have been impacted. So while it's important to count how much of something we're doing, we can't stop there. We have to collect data on the next level, which is through mindsets and behaviors data or perception data. And as school counselors, we do that through pre and post tests. So that is where we measure students' attitudes, knowledge, and skills around a topic. We would come up with 3 or 4 questions at the beginning of a lesson or beginning of an intervention and ask those same questions at the end to see if there was growth. Your teachers do the same thing. This is a continuous improvement cycle, right? We're going to do something, we're going to measure how successful it was, we're going to do it again, or we're going to tweak and adjust it, or we're going to stop doing it if it's not making an impact on students. So we know that when we can adjust or change a student's attitude, knowledge, and skills, they are more likely to have a behavior change. And that is the outcome data, are those behaviors that are going to change. So they might have increased attendance, they might have fewer office referrals, we might have more families coming to events or more families that are involved in what students are doing. We're going to see maybe FAFSA applications going up, post-secondary applications going up. We'll see AP test scores going up. That outcome data is your moneymaker data, is what we call it. So when we're designing our school counseling programs, when we start with tier 1, we're looking at who, what, when, where. I'm going to go into 5th grade. I'm going to teach these 5 lessons on this topic. This is the pre and post test. And we start there on the left and kind of move to the right. And then we might look at outcome data to see if those lessons had an impact. When we're designing our tier 2 interventions, we're looking at data to determine who needs tier 2. How many of you get stopped in the lunchroom? You're just trying to go have a tuna sandwich and somebody starts telling you all about these kids that need small group counseling, right? Or that need your services in some way. Using data to determine who needs tier 2 can slow that roll a little bit and make things more intentional. It's still important to take referrals from other people that know the students, but it's also really important to look at data to identify the students who need additional support. So parts of our training really take you into a deep dive in designing your tier 1 program and a deep dive into designing your tier 2 program using data to drive that. All right. Here's the question I was looking for. So we've talked a little bit about data. We've talked about professional learning. What does professional learning look like in your district? There's another Mentimeter here that Julia is going to drop in. I'm curious, this might be how often you meet, what the topics are that you address, who's running your PD, those kinds of things. I always love seeing this because I used to run the PD in Madison. And so I like to see how it looks in different districts. And sometimes it looks like a blank slate because there's not much going on. There they go, roll it in. We got one answer. Keep going. I'm assuming that means folks at the district office are facilitating your PD, who may or may not have ever been school counselors, right? More often than not, they don't have experience as a school counselor, which doesn't mean they're not capable of delivering PD, but they might have some experience in like one section of school counseling, not kind of the all-encompassing world that we live in. We're getting a lot of take care of yourself, take some bubble baths, yeah, some self-care. It's not school counselors that are presenting. Okay, PD by level. Some are optional that you can sign up for. I used to do that. I had required PD and then I had pop-in PD that people could just drop into based on the topic if they wanted. That's when I did the curtain PD, is when I would add the optional things. The things that were not optional were when we were doing Ask a National Model work. Okay, so sometimes your PD is outsourced. They're sending you to your state school counseling association, to the NVSCA conference webinars. All right. Many of you probably have to go to teacher PD and be there. Sometimes I'll tell you, I've been to some fabulous teacher PD that I was required to be a part of. And I've had some great conversations with my former principals about whether or not I needed to be at that PD. And so through the annual agreement and conversations I had with my principal, we came to some agreements about when I should be with teachers and when I didn't need to be. So yeah, I see some of you are creating your own PD, you're doing your own studying, okay, based on your demographics and the community that you're serving. So we know that PD is not a one-stop shop. It's not a fix-all for everyone. And you can jump back over to the slide deck there. You've probably all seen this kind of joke that's on there. For a fair selection, everybody has to take the same exam. Please climb that tree. And I use this as an example of counselors being required to attend the same PD as teachers. The PD needs to be differentiated based on our role in our work. And we want it to be run by folks that understand the role and understand the work. While others can deliver PD, that's great. That's important too. We need to really examine the PD that we're accessing, the kinds that we're asking for and the kinds that we're advocating for, and thinking about how you're meeting the best needs of your students. And as a big data nerd and data lover, how are you using data? What kind of PD are you getting in accessing data and using data to drive your school counseling program? So Julia is going to talk to you for a few minutes about our newest venture with Study Smart Tutors. Most of you are on here, you're familiar with Hatching Results, and we've partnered with Study Smart Tutors, and they're a fun group. I get to meet with them every week and work with them, and we have these online courses now that are accessible to all school counselors. And they are created by Dr. Julie Hartline, Dr. Trish Hatch, who are the co-authors of the textbook, The Use of Data in School Counseling. And what I love about them is they're created by them, and you get to see their little face. You'll see a little video in a few minutes of Dr. Hartline popping up on the screen, teaching you some of this content. So I'm going to pass it over to Julia.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mindy. And I can talk about it all day about how I put the curtain and not having the foundation as the first year counselor, and give you a little bit of what the back of the history that I was working as a school counselor, and a first generation student is the most majority, and city label our school as the gang related zip code school. So I'm the only one and the only counselor, and let's talk about the ratio, but later day. So we all share the same challenges. It was my first year at the counseling, and I attended a counselor conference, school counselor conference in Orange County. And that's the first time I see Dr. Trish Hatch. I heard the Mtmdss from her and get the book from that day from the conferences. And I finally realized it, what I need to do and how I need to present it and how I need to use the data specifically to implement it at my school. So I am so grateful to now. I've been working with the Study Smart Tutors for years. And last year we get to work with the Hatching Results to provide these courses. And you don't have to go the only textbook for you as I did it in my first year in the counseling. So use of data pathway, what we call it, has the 7 courses. And the courses are based on the, again, best-selling text and taught by co-authors Dr. Trish Hatch and Dr. Julie Hartline. All courses aim towards the school counselor to learn how to design data-informed comprehensive school counseling programs within a tier system of support, while also exploring practical strategies for using the data informed our comprehensive school counseling programs. I know sometimes things may come as overwhelming or too much or where to start, and these courses and this module will help you to get it, chunk it by one, step by step, how to get it done in your practice. In this course, the school counselor will be introduced to using the data in design, implementation, as Minda mentioned, the pre and post evaluation and improvement of the school counseling. And here are the 7 courses. Great thing is about the courses is, other than what we already mentioned, that you can meet with Arthur, you can listen it, it's in the module, it's really easy to follow through, which I'm going to show it a little bit. But each course also offers graduate credits from Cal State San Marcos, along with the CEU units, if that's what you needed. These courses are designed around the video, lots of reflection and bunch of check for understanding to make sure that we are on the same page, that you are getting the information. So we all know that data is a powerful tool that when we understood and utilized correctly, and we know that it can be transformational to your school counseling program and to your community. Throughout the courses that we aim, the school counselor will have a chance to reflect on their previous experience using the data, and then learn how to collect and analyze the data to create the goals, first of all, and the second, to evaluate our counseling programs. Counselors who complete these courses will not only believe in the value of using the data, and they will develop the knowledge and skill necessary to begin to implementing data-driven practice. That's what Mindy was mentioning about in the lunchroom when you're eating your sandwich, and then that you will have the data-driven practice and conversation with your colleague, and your advocacy will base on your data-driven information that you are getting it. I also need to put it out there, Mindy, I'm the probably one that I did sign up as a former chemistry teacher, become a counselor, because I love data, because I believed in science and I love the numbers. And that was a great.
You might be the 3rd person I've met in my life that became a counselor because they love data.
Awesome. Well, when I applied to grad school, school didn't believe I can be a school counselor. They said, you look good, but come on, you're a chemistry major. So they put me in the 1-year undergrad courses as a prerequisite. So I have to take the 12 units undergrad psychology classes in order to prove them I can be a good counselor.
Yeah.
So, but I was really good with the data, so I'll put it out there for everyone. So this is the one of the example that you can see it in our platform when you sign up. So this is the course number 1, data. There's 5 lessons designed to complete it. We are thinking about a 45 to about an hour. In the course, they have, again, the reflection. I keep saying the reflection because how important it is. And especially if you don't have the space or collaboration, or maybe the leadership in your school. That was my case. I was the one and only counselor in the school. There's a lot of check for understanding that reinforce the text and video-based instruction in each respective lesson. Each lesson is introduced with the lesson objective, so counselor can familiarize themselves with the overall goal of each lesson. And finally, and one of the most important components to this course, that what we are advocating for students, also we are advocating for the counselor, pre and post test to determine the efficacy of the course. Awesome. So what I want to do is that I want to, this is a little snapshot from the platform that when you can see it, There's a warm-up question followed by the video and activity. And one of the examples that I'm going to show you is the lesson explain the type of data, and Mindy was mentioning it, and using the data to design, implement, and again, evaluate to improve the comprehensive school counseling programs. I'll go ahead and this is a 7 minutes video, but I'm going to have us to watch about 2 minutes or so.
In order to evaluate outcomes, we have to know the different types of data that school counselors collect. The first is process data, also known as participation data in the 4th edition of the ASCA National Model. What is process data? It's essentially answering specific things about those interventions and lessons that you put in place. It's being able to explain the who did you service, when did you service it, what did you do for them, where did you do it, how long did you do it, with what did you do it. So all of those details that go into planning. And so when we think about process or participation data, we think of it as the what I did data, because it only tells what the school counselor has done. It doesn't tell you anything about how students are different as a result of what you do. It's impressive, but it doesn't answer the question, so what? Are students more likely to attend class, behave, improve their grades? Those are things that others care about. So if you can tell them how many classroom lessons you've done, or how many groups you've done, or how many parents you've talked to, and that's been something that counselors have done for years, that's great. But then there's the question, so what? Which is going to take us into the other types of data. But first, just to share an example of process data, maybe I worked with 32 students during a FAFSA completion session on a certain date, and I did it in my school library. This is all process data and important to know, but so what? Did kids complete a FAFSA? Did they learn anything through this process? And that's why we go to the next two types of data. The second one is perception data. Perception data was renamed Mindsets and Behaviors Data in the 4th edition of the ASCA National Model. And it's this data that measures ask. Remember we talked about that acronym ask in our objectives? Well, now you're going to learn what that means. But when we're talking about perception data, I want you to understand that we're really looking at what a student believes. That's their attitudes. What do they know? What knowledge do they have? And what can they demonstrate? And that's their skill. So if you take the first letter of each of those words and you do a little bit of rearranging, you'll have attitude, skills, and knowledge. Okay? Ask, that acronym ASK. And we want to ask students how their attitudes change, how their skills change, how their knowledge change. Because if we can change students' attitude, skills, and knowledge, we can change behavior for them.
Yeah, that's a little bit about so what. But if you are hearing the so what, I think it's still a good win. That means that you are doing something, you are providing, and you are explaining. And these courses will help you to take you from that so what to do the next step. And then the outcome will be the behavior change for the students. I love it. I love how she explained it. And I love how, because maybe I'm biased because I go over the book and learn it by myself. And then now we have the beautiful platform and course designed by you to make it really easy and super helpful for your practice. What we also in the platform, it's interactive. So you will get the text of the book as a PDF. And there's a lot of multimedia. Again, there's a lot of collaboration in not only in individual, but also you can do as a collaborative in your school district, in your program, in your whole other schools. Have a group discussion, whole class discussion, and at the end you will able to get your notes and responses to download it and maybe use it in your professional learning or PD program to use it with your other counselor. We also, if you are the school district leader and you need to know and you need to advocate and you need to prove your own data to the school board or whoever making sure the funding is properly used, that's also the data for you. Platform will give it to you, not only the grader report, but also in pre and post report from the school counselor. I'm going to call this a learner for these purposes. You are able to see the activity completion report. You are able to see the how many times to log in, and then you will be able to provide the whole data and advocate for your counselor to do more, hopefully. But the platform, it's super easy in one click that will provide to you. So many times we get asked the question, is it only online? Can I get access with my laptops? Can I get access with my phone? Yes, this course is designed to be asynchronous, but it can be in person, hybrid, virtual. Jack will talk about it a little bit, how it would look like in your program. It's very up to you and whatever the needs for your program. That can be instructor-led, that can be self-guided. And it's also available all the platform in desktop, laptops, and smartphones.
All right. So one of the things that I like about these courses is you actually produce an artifact to go along with it. I don't know if y'all are like me, but I'm a nerd and I buy school counseling textbooks all the time and then I never read them. They're sitting here and I have hopes and dreams of reading them all. And I'm on year 19 and there's probably just as many books that I own that I haven't gotten around to reading. Or I sign up for a book study and then I don't read the chapters I'm supposed to read to show up to the book study. So maybe I'm the outlier here, but what I love about these courses is that they're engaging and you actually produce some things that you can use tomorrow in your school counseling program. So this document shows you how it's connected to the Ask a School Counselor competencies, and it shows you what you will walk away having created. And if you look at some of those things are things that you can actually start to apply to your program right away. An annual agreement, a SMART goal, writing out your own desired outcomes for your program. It kind of forces you to step back and look at your school counseling program on a larger scale. And that's one of the things that I really love about it. It's not all theory and people telling us all the research, it's action. It's things you can start to do and use tomorrow with students. So this is a great document, and I actually created this with Study Smart Tutors because as a former district director, I needed to know if my counselors were going to do this, what are they producing? What's the outcome? And again, the so what, it answers that question. So what, they're spending 15 hours doing this course. What are they going to have to show for it after that 15 hours? And that's what this document is. Go ahead to the next one. So one of the things, if you follow Hatching Results much, you've probably seen us talk about our flashlight presentations. And these are similar to ASCA's results reports. And we have a whole module training on creating those reports. And this is what those look like. We teach people the types of data to collect. We teach you how to make charts and graphs and how to make them pretty and make them pop. And these are some examples. What I did here on the left is the overall document, and then there's kind of a zoom in there on the right. And so you can see very clearly the impact that that particular lesson or that activity or that intervention had on students. And so these are really important when we're sharing these outcomes with others. And I would say, go back to that self-care, right? It helps me look at this and go, oh my gosh, look at the impact I had. We all have days where we go home and are like, what am I doing with my life here? You know, I could be at the bank, I could be a Starbucks barista. I know y'all have said that. I could be doing this and having caramel macchiatos all day. This really helps you see the bigger impact that you're having. We've also have those days where that one kid gives you the warm fuzzies and you had that great impact. But now you can see and get those warm fuzzies and those goosebumps by seeing the impact that you had on 100 kids or just on a larger scale. So I would almost argue that data is self-care. That might be the title of our next webinar, Data is Self-Care. See if anybody shows up to that one. Here are some other examples. These are all linked, so you can dig in and look a little more closely if you would like at some of these that some school districts that we've worked with have done. And just a little plug, we are offering a free webinar coming up on April 28th. We have 2 school counselors from Missouri that presented at our National Leadership in School Counseling Conference, and they presented on how they utilize flashlight presentations to show their results in their district. So there's a link there if you'd like like to register for that and get another taste at creating these results reports or flashlight presentations. All right, back to Julia, or is this Jack?
Here comes Jack.
So this may apply more, more as you think about implementing some of these courses with your school district. Obviously, these courses are designed, for a multitude of uses. I know we've gotten a lot of demand from school counselors who need them for their CEUs, for their CUs, for their CEs, for their ADEs, for their sketches, depending on what state you're in. The acronyms vary. But this is a model that we've seen also with school districts implementing these as a hybrid PD option. The courses definitely can be designed to be done in a hybrid model. This is kind of a flipped classroom model with some asynchronous and synchronous content. Happy to share with you all and with you if you're interested in implementing some of these things with your district about what some of these models could look like. Same idea here. These are all 7 courses. Again, depending on what units you need or what your licensure requirements are, you're very unlikely to need to do all 7 courses in a school year. Your district is very unlikely to purchase all 7 in a school year, but we have had a number of school counselors in Arizona specifically. We have had folks need to do all 7 in a year for their licenses. You can get through it. It's not the easiest, but you can definitely do it. But you can do them all in a year, though we don't recommend it, but we're happy to talk through about what that could look like for you. We also have one additional pathway that we didn't talk about today. For those of you that are middle school counselors or working with middle school students, we built a 3-course pathway to support you all. The needs here that we've been hearing, and Study Smart has been in the college access space for a long time. If any of you have TRIO programs or Gear Up programs, Upward Bound programs like that at your schools, we have a lot of experience working with those folks. And in that space, we had been hearing from those folks, the middle school, saying, hey, we want to prepare our students for college and post-secondary. We want to have tools. We just don't have time. We don't have the resources. We don't have enough to do it. And that's why we built this pathway as well, is to focus around those tools and skills for folks working at the middle school. So if you're interested in those, I'm more than happy to share that information out as well. And lastly, I want to thank the Nevada School Counselors Association for their partnership. If you are a member of the Nevada School Counselor Association, you get a 15% off on any courses that you are interested in. If you need them for your licensure and you need the CE units, please talk with us. We have special codes for you to get your 15% off. If you need multiple courses, the 15% off applies even in addition to the multi-course discounts. So our courses are discounted for each additional course that you need. But if you're a member of the association, you get an additional discount on top of that. So you get discounts on top of discounts, which we are happy to talk with you about what those look like. But the idea is to make these courses as accessible for you as possible. We know that getting licensure credits is sometimes very expensive, and so our goal is to make it as affordable as we possibly can. I think we have 4 minutes left. Great job, Mindy and Julia. We have given everyone 4 minutes of their life back if they would like it, but we are more than happy to stay on and answer any questions. This webinar is recorded. We will send this out to everybody along with our information so that we can answer questions that you have, so that we can talk through anything. If you're interested in getting a demo access to any of these courses, we're more than happy to provide that. We really hope that this information is valuable and something you can take back to your teams. Thank you all so much for joining us. Mindy, thank you. Julia, thank you. Carly, thank you times 2 for letting us participate today. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate your time.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Super interesting to hear about like the ways that just making those flash reports look really cool. So.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Is it okay if I share the